I'm Lucy, I use she, her pronouns and I identify as queer.
Hello, I'm Casey, I use she, her pronouns and I identify as bi.
Hey, I'm Kirsty, I use she, her pronouns and I identify as bi.
We are super excited to unpack a really complex discussion around gender, expression and inclusivity today.
All of us are a member of the LGBTQIA+ community and we have been exposed to a lot of transphobic discourse. This being online, in person, from elders or young people, and even within our community itself.
Today, we'll chat to the amazing Charlie Craggs and get their insight into their experiences of gender and why they think this bigotry and misunderstanding is allowed to exist in our society. We'll understand both sides to the gender experience, find the root to it all, and finally, we will deep dive into the history of gender and educate people on the science and social science of the weird and wonderful world of gendered experiences. If you miss anything or are somewhere that's a little too loud right now, you can listen to this podcast again on iTunes, Spotify, and all major streaming services by searching Comics Youth.
Comics Youth is an organisation run by marginalised young people from 8 to 25 years old in the Liverpool City region who want to find their voice, navigate complex traumas in a creative way, and learn valuable skills on how to make art and understanding that being different is often a really great thing. We offer alternative provision for alternative people. All of us on the podcast today are queer young people who want to challenge, understand, and educate people on the assumption that being trans, non-binary, or genderqueer is anything other than natural, wonderful, and doesn't make a person less worthy of accessing the support they need.
There are a lot of misconceptions and myths around the trans experience. It's important that at the heart of everything, we remember that we're talking about humans here, with a lot more to offer than just their gender, sex, or the way they present. Often, when people don't understand something, it is met with fear. We would like to clarify some fears and myths to help highlight the realities of the trans experience.
First of all, the myth that gender-affirming treatment for trans children is irreversible. This is false, as a trans person under the age of 18 cannot get gender-affirming surgery. They are only prescribed hormone treatment at the age of 16, the age in which a person is considered to be competent enough to consent to medical treatment. Up until that point, they can be prescribed puberty blockers. It's already recognised in law that children under the age of 18 can, in some circumstances, make decisions about their treatment without parental consent if they are assessed at Gilead competent, has capacity to consent, or through Fraser guidelines, which are more specific to contraception and sexual health.
One of the main assumptions about young trans people is that they're following a trend. In the LGBTQ+ community specifically, there's a worrying movement of people who believe that LGBT spaces and people are in some form of danger from the inclusion of trans people. Because of this, there's British trans exclusionary groups like LGBT Alliance who want to prevent schools from teaching about gender identity and stop young people from accessing gender-affirming healthcare. In case you aren't sure what LGBT Alliance is, it's a British non-partisan charity and advocacy group, which was founded in September 2019 in opposition to Stonewall's inclusive policies on transgender issues. Their website raises concerns about attempts to introduce confusion between biological sex and the notion of gender, and blames the rise of pseudoscience and increased misinformation about basic biology for the increase in young people identifying as transgender. But our concern lies with the misinformation and often hateful rhetoric that they're directing towards the young people that they're supposedly trying to protect. They also reject the co-opting of rare medical differences in sexual development in order to cast doubt on the binary nature of sex. The cause assumes that young people don't know who they are and don't deserve the knowledge and choice to make that decision for themselves. Another myth is that puberty blockers don't cure gender dysphoria, so they just shouldn't be used. But just as many other medications don't cure the condition they're being prescribed to treat, puberty blockers and hormone treatments are just one of many complex ways of alleviating gender dysphoria. It was made clear by the Gender Identity Development Service, otherwise known as GIDS, that puberty blockers aren't prescribed to cure gender dysphoria, only to alleviate it by delaying distressing puberty and allowing young people time to consider their gender identity, so that if they do continue with gender-affirming treatment, they don't have to go through surgeries like top surgery or facial feminization as an adult. There was a study by Steensma in 2011 that found that behavioural and emotional problems and depressive symptoms decreased, while general functioning improved significantly in young people who were prescribed puberty blockers. There was also a 2020 study by Dr. Jack Turban that found that people who had received pubertal suppression as adolescents were less likely to experience suicidal thoughts during their lifetime than those who wanted to receive these medications but did not.
Also, the myth that gender dysphoria and being transgender has only come about recently and is a trend common amongst adolescents. There are documents of trans people having existed since the Civil War. There just weren't the terms for it then. In fact, the term transgender was only coined in around 1971, and in the 90s, members of the LGBTQ community began to use trans asterisk as an all-encompassing term. This originally used to include explicitly both transsexual and transgender. Now it indicates the inclusion of gender identities such as gender fluid, agender, alongside transsexual and transgender. Oxford English Dictionary added trans in 2018. The internet and means to communicate and form communities with people around the world has only been possible in the last 20 or so years, meaning that members of the LGBTQ community who once felt alienated or alone can meet hundreds of thousands of others, encouraging their validation. This doesn't mean it's only just happened or it's an internet trend. The internet's just a tool to bring marginalized groups together to show that they make up a much bigger percentage of society than people think. There is also the myth that children or adolescents can't know for sure what they want, or they're too young to make decisions about their gender or to take puberty blockers. This is patronizing and simply untrue. Young people have the right to bodily autonomy, just as adults do, and to suggest one doesn't know themselves is unfair.
Kira Bell is a good example of what could happen to your trans child. 1. Too young to consent. Bell started puberty blockers aged 16 and had surgery aged 20 before detransitioning, so her case isn't that of being too young to understand, as her treatment began after the legally presumed age of capacity to consent. 2. Medications prescribed too readily. The waiting time for a first assessment at GIDS standing at 22 to 26 months as of November 2019. According to court documents, Bell was first seen at GIDS at age 16 and had a number of appointments. Bell claims there were around 3. GIDS claims it was more like 10, spread out over 1 year and 9 months. It's difficult to understand how that could be rushed. 3. Detransition. Kira Bell's story is deeply sad and evident of a long struggle with gender identity and society. In her statement, she speaks of the confusing post-transition realization that the vision she had as a teenager of becoming male was strictly a fantasy and that it was not possible. However, it's important to note that multiple studies have found less than 3% of transgender people regret transitioning. So Kira's experience should not be used as an example of the majority transgender experience, especially when considering restricting such vital treatments. Just because Kira Bell has/had gender dysphoria, it does not mean that she is a spokesperson for all detransitioners, let alone all trans people. How many ex-homosexuals preach about how their sexuality was really something else, or how children should be defended from the homosexual agenda?
And also debunking some of the LGB Alliance's claims. The LGB Alliance attribute the rise in those coming out as transgender to education and awareness of gender identity, or as they like to call it, pseudoscience. It's frustrating how they manage to miss the point because, yes, more people are openly transgender now, but it's not because they didn't exist before. It just means that nowadays we have the language and resources to explore our gender identities. In terms of young people growing up in this more accepting, but definitely in need of improving environment, they aren't being confused or misled. They're being provided with the language to describe their identity that, if available sooner, could have saved entire generations of trans people from a lifetime of distress. And whilst there is a dark history of distress for trans people, there is also a future of hope.
At the end of June this year, the appeal for the 2020 judgment was heard. Barristers for the Tavistock and Portman NHS Foundation Trust argued that the decision wrongly departed from the Gillick principle of the capacity of a child to consent to treatment and relied on unsubstantiated and improperly submitted evidence. Lead barrister Fenella Morris QC stated that the ruling intruded into the realm of decisions agreed upon by doctors, patients, and their parents, where the court had not previously gone. The decision from this appeal will take some weeks to months. It's often trans people leading the way and making change that's important to the rights and experiences of the communities we serve. Someone who's created lasting change is our next guest.
And we have the wonderful Charlie Craggs. Charlie is a young trans activist from London. She founded Nail Transphobia and recently made it onto the Independent's Rainbow List, coming 40th in their list of the 101 most influential LGBTI people in the UK. Charlie, it is so cool to have you with us.
Thank you. It's so nice to be with you. Also, all your hair is so nice. I feel like such a loser next to all of you, my horrible hair.
Listen, no. We need to balance out the blonde anyway. So firstly, we'd like to give you the opportunity to share with us your biggest achievement and, have space to celebrate it, because you've achieved so many great things.
Oh God, I don't know about that. You're very, very kind. I don't know. I've been doing this for a long time. So yeah, I don't know. I guess maybe the thing I'm most proud of is my most recent thing is I just finished filming a documentary for BBC, which is coming out really soon actually, which is exciting, called Transitioning Teens. And actually someone in it is kind of affiliated with like Gyro and is up in Liverpool. They're a trans activist called Felix. I don't know if you know them. They're like, seems to be really well connected up in Liverpool, but they are incredible. And so I basically traveled around the country just meeting the trans young people who are at the center of this debate that's going on every single day in the media. Like they're all that's being talked about right now. It's insane. And I just wanted to meet the young people that are at the center of this, to hear from them, because you never hear them in the debates or in the conversation. It's just talking about them. So just kind of like it was just like unpacking all the kind of false narratives in the media around like, how they try and make out that young people are being kind of rushed into transition when really they're waiting for like 5 years for a first appointment, and like the toll that takes on their mental health and also their financial kind of the ramifications on their finances, and also just like having to buy black market hormones even. So it was a tough one. It's not like a fun documentary, but that's probably why I'm most proud of it, because it's really important. And it's not about me, like that's not me being big-headed saying I'm proud of it, because I'm just literally the presenter. But the young people I met, like Felix up in Liverpool, are absolutely incredible. Incredible. I'm clearly not incredible, sorry, and are testament to why I do what I do.
Do you feel that the trans experience is often overshadowed by the negative opinions of others, or do you think the achievements and success shines through regardless?
A bit of both, I guess. That's a really good question, because so often it is very much a negative. I will say this, the hardest thing about being trans, like being a trans person, is hard, but it's not hard because being trans is hard, but it's hard because of how you get treated for being trans. In the same way with a lot of things, like being gay, for example, or whatever, like it's being trans is easy peasy, but it's like the public, the people, or even just like gatekeepers, I guess, like the NHS and stuff, or just medical, the institution, and that make it hard to be trans. So like I guess, yeah, there's definitely that part to it, that like there's this kind of, I guess, because like I said in my last answer, like we're often talked about but not talked with. So like often the narratives are very negative, so it'll be like we'll be being talked about very negatively, and there is positive that flourishes from that. Like my project came from the negativity, this documentary comes from the negativity, so we do try and like find some joy and our joy in the negative, but often it is hard. And I saw Paris Lee's, the Vogue columnist, recently about how she refuses to give in to this trans trauma narrative. She's like, I'm not gonna let this be my narrative. And that really resonated with me, because like you said, so much of the portrayal of trans people can be, and especially right now in the media, so negative, especially here in the UK. I think it's really important that trans people don't let that consume them. Like, even though there is so much, it's very politicized and it's all these debates, they're gonna debate and they're gonna be negative, but don't let that impact on yourself. And it's something I struggle with. So like, I'm not patronizing anyone by saying that, because I need to take my own advice. But yeah, I would just really recommend that trans people just kind of don't let yourself be consumed by the negativity as much as it's really hard not to be, but you got to keep fighting for yourself, because you deserve a life full of joy, like Paris is saying.
We will be diving into the misconceptions cis people have on the trans experience. But is there one myth regarding trans people that you hear the most? What would you like to say to people who believe in it?
Oh God, this is a bit of a depressing one, but like I kind of mentioned with my documentary, the thing about how it's just made out like you go to your GP on the Monday and by the Friday you're on hormones, and then by the Saturday you've been referred for surgery or something. It's literally painted like it's just so easy, and like that trans teenagers, and not even just trans teenagers, but just trans people, trans adults, like it was the same for me. I waited years and years for just for a first appointment to discuss transitioning. Not a single hormone was even mentioned for years after that. Never mind surgery being like, I was offered surgery like 7 years after my first appointment, and it just is so upsetting that like it's the complete opposite from what the public are being told, and that's why there is so much fear, and why the public are like, oh, maybe these, what if it is a phase, and da, da, da. Like it's like, I just find it so unfair. I just think, never mind it being kind of morally incorrect, I don't know how it's even legally correct. Like, do you see these headlines? I remember the one on the Mirror for you in 2017, so it's not even that long ago, and it was like 50 kids a week being sent to sex change clinics, and it had a picture of like a toddler with his head in his hands, as if toddlers are having sex changes or even being given hormones. They're not even going through puberty. Like, it just is absolute madness. I just don't understand how it's allowed. So I'd say that's probably the biggest one, and that's why I'm really excited for my documentary to come out, because it's so it just breaks down all the BS, and it just really cuts to the truth. And because it is for BBC, which was kind of conflicting for me, because it meant that it had to be very unbiased and very like neutral. So I couldn't just be like a trans activist being like being very like what I normally am, which is very passionate and very like unapologetically kind of biased in my. I think that's actually, for me at the time, I was like, this is really annoying, but now I think about it, I'm like, actually this is perfect, because the transphobes who are going to watch can't say, well, you didn't talk about this, or you didn't talk about this, and throw other cards at me. I talked about every single thing that I didn't even want to talk about. For example, like detransitioners, I even met a detransitioner, we put them in the documentary, and I had to like face things I didn't want to face, but in the end it worked out better, because now the transphobes can't turn around and say, well, you didn't talk about this. The interesting thing is that me and the detransitioner came to the exact same conclusion, even though we're on totally different ends of the spectrum, is that there just needs to be more provision in place. Like, because they were saying like, I slipped through the net and I wasn't trans, and they weren't saying they were rushed, but they were like, I made a mistake, and I think if I had more help from like more intervention, because you just get like one appointment every year or something, and it's, you wait 5 years for your first one. They were like, I wish I'd had more intervention. I'm like, I wish we had more intervention as well, because then amazing thing is, from that conversation, is that we both came to the same conclusion, that we just need more intervention, whether that's to catch the 1% of trans people who are detransitioners and who are slipping through the net, or for the 99% of trans people who are absolutely desperate. I think that's kind of the best thing that came out of the documentary for me, which was definitely a silver lining.
I love that you got both sides there. That's what people miss a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't like doing it, but
yeah,
it worked out for the best.
Yeah, definitely.
I just wanted to give my side.
Yeah, go in there all sass.
Yeah.
This is a heavy one. What advice or words of wisdom would you like to give to someone that, who's, unsure about their gender, or knowing, how to navigate that?
I guess the advice I'd give to anyone who is kind of questioning their gender is to just like there's no rush. Like, and this is like what I'm saying is the opposite of what the media are portraying, of like there's this massive rush, and there's no rush in terms of like getting appointments. But also, just, you shouldn't feel like a rush in the same way if you were exploring your sexuality. You don't have to like come out as anything, you don't have to start doing anything, you don't have to like join some big gay secret society or something. It's just a case of like, oh, I think I like boys, maybe I'll go on a date with a boy. Maybe it's not even a case of going on a date with a boy. Maybe I'll just like, I don't know, go on a dating app and see if I like to talk to some boys. Maybe it's even less than that, and I'll just watch some films and just like educate myself around this and see if it actually does resonate and stuff. And I think that's the same with, if you were questioning your gender, it's maybe just a case of like, maybe just watch some trans YouTubers and see if like their story resonates with you. See, maybe, and watch like loads that you can see, like, because there's all different types of trans people. So maybe it will also help you see that you're not trans by watching them. Because like that's how I realized I wasn't gay, actually, by being around gay people, because I was told I was gay my whole life. I was about 7 when I started getting called gay. I never actually ever came out as gay, but I really thought I was gay because I'd always been told I was gay and I liked boys, but I was just feminine. What I didn't realize is I was female, not just feminine. But when I was around around gay people for the first time is when I realized I wasn't gay, because I was like, oh, I am not like these people. Like, I wish I was, but sadly for me, it's going to be a lot more expensive and a lot more like hard in some ways, my life, with a lot more surgery and stuff. But like, that's what I needed to do, is to be around gay people. So I'd say just like immerse yourself in the culture, whether that is online, in person, in film, and in literature, and in media. Like, there's so many ways just to like kind of like put your toes in the water. Like, it doesn't have to be as serious of like going to the GP. Like, there's loads of stages that come before that. Like, I was questioning my gender for years before I went, and again, I feel like that's something I wish, never mind trans people, but like the cis people, cis straight people listening would understand. It's not like I said, of the whole thing of you go to your GP on the Monday and by the Friday you've like had all your surgeries. It's like there's years of like thought and like coming out to people and coming out to yourself that go into that, going to booking that first GP appointment. Like, there's loads of stages before that.
Oh no, thank you for sharing that. I know that'll help a lot of people who might be themselves transitioning. Do you have a sentence that you'd like to say to cis people who maybe aren't very aware of the trans experience?
I guess if in a sentence, what I'd say to people who aren't aware or like kind of engaged in the conversation around trans issues, trans people, transness, would just be to like have a bit of compassion. And this goes to people who are outsiders from all kind of minority groups and all kind of issues, quotation marks, in the media right now. You don't have to be part of that community to have compassion for that community. You don't have to be part of that community to believe that community deserve rights. You don't even have to like agree with that community, but to believe that they deserve human rights. But like, just have a bit of compassion, especially with our community, the trans community, with how hard it is to be trans. I promise you, not a single one of us would choose this if we didn't have to. Like, it's a hard walk. It's not like a willy-nilly decision to like, oh, I think I'll transition just for the lols. Like, no, it's really hard. Like, it would be a lot easier just to not transition. So like, please have some compassion, if nothing else. Like, even if I don't think you really have to understand it to understand that it's hard, and just to have a bit of compassion for us. And beyond that, I would say like, beyond that wasn't really a sentence, but going a bit deeper than that, I would say like, such a simple way to kind of get a bit more understanding in this kind of digital age is to just diversify your like kind of following, like your social media feed, so that even if you're not engaging with the person's content, like, you don't have to comment, you don't have to like, you don't have to DM them, but just by kind of consuming their content and reading their captions and like and seeing the pictures and videos and just kind of understanding someone from that community's kind of like life, it just like helps you to kind of engage in the conversation and like get a base level understanding and be like, oh, it will just help you kind of be introduced to the conversation. So I would say, and that goes again for all kind of minority groups and like marginalized communities, is to just like just tap into the conversation by listening. And a good way of doing that is by literally just something as simple as following someone from that community on social media. Sorry, I'm feeling a bit low today. I'm a bit monotone. I'm just having a bit of a sad I'm getting so much abuse online. I'm so tired.
Well, with our questions, we got so much covered, and I think that bit about compassion is so like, it's just human decency. It doesn't. I just think you put it so perfectly.
It's translatable to like all communities. You don't have to be part of it to care. Like, you can see what's right and what's wrong, and if you can see a community of people are like having their rights stripped away or are waiting 5 years for their appointment, like, who else waits 5 years for a bloody appointment? Like, yeah, you can just see that that's wrong. What's right is right and what's wrong is wrong.
I could never interrupt.
No, you first.
I just want to know, when is your documentary coming out?
They don't actually tell. It's really annoying. They don't tell you until 2 weeks before. I think because it's like got an embargo, because they know it's going to cause. Because already, like, the Daily Mail have written about it already, like horribly. Like, it will get a lot of shit. So like, they're embargoing it. But yeah, that's why I'm getting a lot of shit online these days, which is not fun. I just hope I do the community justice, and I hope I did all right. Like, because I don't get to direct it, so I didn't get to like edit or cut. So I don't know. Kind of, I know everything I said I stand by, and everything, and it will. And the director's like a massive ally. She's one of my best friends now. We get on really well. But I don't know. Like, I just hope it will be up to my standards of like, oh, I represent my community well. So if I didn't, please send my apologies to everyone. Like, if I didn't fight hard enough for us, but I tried my best. I really did. I'm going to come up to Liverpool again and see. I'm going to hang out. I'd love to hang out with you guys as well. Just do like a pit stop, like hang out with it'll be really nice to just like meet everyone. I feel like Liverpool is just so kind to me, and I just want to move to Liverpool, to be honest. Happy to help it however I can.
I hope you have a really lovely evening.
So
you too, my love. See you later.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
yeah.
It was really good to hear from Charlie and hear her thoughts on the misconceptions about young trans people in the UK at the moment, especially from someone who has been through those processes herself. Throughout history, trans, non-binary and genderqueer people have campaigned and fought for equality. From the Stonewall riots being led by trans women of colour to people like Charlie leading the way in campaign work for real change to be made. Change is happening, no matter how slow or fast. There is no future without hope, so be hopeful, be kind and be supportive of everyone you meet. Everybody is going through things you may not understand, and you don't have to have the answer, just have the kindness to support people when they need it.
This podcast has covered the misconceptions and myths around the trans experience, how we can be better allies to non-cis people, and hearing from the wonderful Charlie Craggs on their lived experience and advice for others. You have been listening to Lucy, Kirsty and Katie from Comics Youth, and you can find out more about what we do over on comicsyouth.co.uk.
We just want to give a huge thanks to Charlie Craggs for joining us, the Comics Youth staff for supporting us, Molly Scarborough and all the wonderful team behind us. Listen to the other episodes in the Act for Change series during the Act for Change Festival.